Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Tang from Hughes, and today I have the privilege of speaking with David Henning. He's the Global Director of our Security Operations here at Hughes. David, we wanted to talk today about PCI DSS 4.0. Can you first explain what is PCI?
Well, PCI is a standard developed by the payment card industry. It came about from Visa, MasterCard, and the others, and it kind of evolved out of a standard that Visa had come out with called KISP, Card Information Security Program. That goes back over 20 years now. And the PCI standard is developed by the PCI Security Council, and it is a published standard that is what merchants are expected to adhere to. They have to show evidence to their acquiring bank that processes their cards for them, and the evidence they show is typically an attestation and report on compliance that they've had. Either they've been able to do as a self-assessment if they're a small enough merchant, or if they're a bigger merchant, they may have to hire a third party to come in and assess for them and then sign off on it. PCI 4.0 is the latest and greatest. It's a standard that was recently introduced, and there are a few elements or requirements within it that don't take full effect until March of 2025. But as of today, any assessment being done must be at least the 4.0 standard, and the older versions 3.2.1 and previous to that are no longer valid for renewal for their merchant assessment.
So we're talking about compliance with requirements that have been established by Visa. Can you tell us a little bit, take us through some of these requirements? What kinds of things are being asked for here?
Well, there's 12 major domains within the requirement list. It covers everything from having good network security controls all the way up to having solid policies, making sure you're doing patching, you're using secure coding techniques if you're coding things on your own, or if you have a third-party code, that you feel comfortable that they're doing the secure coding techniques, collecting logs, monitoring for intrusions, secure account management for the individuals who might have access into the card data environment. Those are some of the big highlights, and encryption of the card data either at rest or while it's in transit somewhere.
Can you talk a little bit about the risk if you're not PCI compliant? What happens?
Well, the big threat is that your acquiring bank just says, we don't want to process cards for you anymore. That's the big stick that they can come after you with. I've not really heard of that happening to a merchant, but certainly fines in terms of if you're not compliant. I'm familiar with merchants being threatened with escalating fines where they start out, hey, you're late on your renewal. We're going to hit you with $5,000. And if you don't make it within the next month it'll be $10,000. It'll jump to 15. It'll keep going until you get yourself in line, or you stop trying to process credit cards. And that can be a pretty significant stick, especially if it's a smaller merchant. That would be much more costly than going through and trying to comply.
You made some mention of PCI 4.0. Can you talk a little bit about what's different? What are the new requirements?
The biggest difference that we've experienced for our own purposes, Hughes goes through. We are a merchant. We process credit card payments from our consumer customer base, and we are also a service provider to other merchants as we provide networks and security services to them. The biggest pain point that we've had in our current renewals has been around a lot more of the documentation requirement that's increased significantly within the new 4.0 standard. So a typical requirement that has been there for a long time would be around logging, collecting logs from systems that are in scope for the environment, and then analyzing those logs, looking for indications of compromise or other things going on that might tip you off that you've got a breach, right? What logs you choose to include and to perform daily analysis on, that can be a decision point. And there's many other requirements that have some flexibility that the merchant can choose a period of how frequently they want to do certain actions or to check on certain things. And now the documentation requires that not only did you make a choice, hey, we're going to do this on a daily basis, or we're going to do this on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, but it also requires, well, why did you make that choice? Document your thought process behind it. The term in PCI is targeted risk assessment. So you've got to do your targeted risk assessment on the specific requirement, document your process of how you did that risk assessment, the decision you came up with, and then show that to your assessor saying, here's why we're doing it this way.
We're formalizing cybersecurity through documentation.
That's a big chunk of it, yeah.
Oh, wow. If I could ask then, if you were a small, medium business and you were not PCI compliant today, what would you do? How would you how would you get started? What would you do to achieve PCI compliance? So,
I mean, a smaller business, a lot of them might be small enough that they can do a self-assessment. And that's really where you start, is assessing. You need to know, well, what is my environment?
Mm-hmm.
What systems and things do I have in it? Who are the people who have access to it? And what are the controls that I have available to me to, make sure that we've got things patched or locked down or restricted in maybe the data is encrypted, things that you need. After you've made that assessment, now you can start saying, well, where are the deficiencies that I have, right? I can look at the list of what's required of me, and I'm not doing X, Y, or Z. And, doing X is going to cost me a certain amount of money to implement. I'm going to go find, the most economical way to implement that. And really, honestly, the best way, especially for, I would think, smaller merchants, is, work on how to reduce that scope of what's really in PCI, right? If you can do a point of sale system or other card processing that, takes all of this out of your hands, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
So, you could have a point of sale system that as soon as that card gets tapped, or the watch or whatever gets tapped to it, it's encrypting that data. You, as the merchant, have no control, no access to the cryptography behind it. It sends that, off to be processed, and you get that, authorization that comes back, and you're done. And, if you can get to that point where, you don't even have the ability to get to that data, that's really a sweet spot to be in.
The strategy is just basically reduce your scope as much as possible. And then with whatever is left, then you start focusing on becoming compliant.
Absolutely.
Does that change noticeably when you get to larger enterprises? Where are their energies focused when it comes to PCI compliance?
It really can vary based on industry, right? Certainly oil and gas, they have so many other considerations with their point of sale systems than a lot of other merchants have.
Mm-hmm.
That, becomes its kind of own, unique category, right? They have to support fleet cards and other things that aren't your standard credit cards, right? And, so there's a few more special requirements around those. But, a big merchant, big box retailers and things like that, it's about economies of scale, right? So, having a system that's going to work across thousands of stores with, many different point of sale touch points and things inside the store, that's where things can, get into the nitpicky details, right?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim.